I want to talk a little bit about you being a female founder. I don't feel we have enough of them. There aren't enough of us, and I'm always, not that I don't love all the men, but I want to see more women be in these roles and succeed. And there are a multitude of reasons for that. And one is more and more research, of course, is starting to show that women in executive leadership positions contribute directly to the bottom line of the company. It's very, very interesting. And, certainly to also note that you're a founder within, the insurtech sector, right? We know that insurance in general, a several hundred-year-old industry, is pretty much run by a bunch of old white men, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to talk a little bit about, you as a woman in the insurance insurtech sector, as a founder, what you have felt your challenges to be at breaking that glass ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's unfortunately it's an always an ongoing challenge.
Sure.
But initially, Carol, even though I'm on the founding team of Benekiva, people would not answer to my email unless
Mm.
Brent was there, right? So we had to put a lot of focus. Like I had to put a lot of focus on making sure that we're not I, as a founder, I'm not hiding behind a male, right?
Mhm.
When I see Ben Akiva, yes, it was Brent put in so much effort and it's because of him we're here.
Mhm.
But when we're looking at from a like how we are, the three of us are the founding team,
That's
right?
right.
So there is no hiding behind each other, right? Like we have to carry our own weight because the execution side is my side of the house. It's not Brent's side of the house, not Suman's side of the house, right? So when I saw that initially, I would initially see, going to Brent for things, and Brent would nicely push back, and it was actually talking openly to the founding team to say, hey, when they email you, you're going to email them to say talk to Bobbie. We had to
Mhm.
build some of that piece so it becomes a norm. It
Yeah.
becomes like, I'm not going to contact somebody that I feel comfortable, that I know that knows this. I'm going to contact somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like it took a lot of effort. And honestly, Carol, it took a lot of me sharing my viewpoints in the industry, becoming friends with a lot of the influencers. And
Mm.
honestly, Brent's the CEO, right? He could have easily said, when I remember the NAIC presentation, and it was me and him, we were there, and he could
Mhm.
have easily said, you know what, Bobbie, like I'm the CEO, I'm going to present. I'm going to do the 7-minute presentation. And he always encouraged collaboration. He's like,
Yeah.
hey, Bobbie, why don't we do this together? So, guess what people started to see? People started to see Brent and Bobbie, Brent and Bobbie. And
Mhm.
and if you see us together, you will see why people like us together because we're feet off of each other, right? He's my brother, right? But I
Mhm.
think that also, even though it wasn't intentional that we were doing that, like it wasn't like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because I've got to do this X, Y, and Z. It was a natural. It became it was natural. But I think it was like that natural, like, hey, let's do this together. It's going to be
Mhm.
fun together. It's going to be this activity we're going to, and I think that's what changed it. And if Brent was selfish, he would have been like, I'm taking the limelight.
Right.
I'm the CEO. I came up with this is my company. He didn't do that, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
where when we talk about true allyship, Carol,
Yeah.
in our industry, it's actually emulating what Brent is doing, right? Like
Right.
Brent invited, right? He could have
Mhm.
been like a hog, but he did not do that.
And that's really I love that you're pointing that out, Bobby, and I do also wanna say that, that shows that your talent-centric approach starts at the top, right? Because if he had hogged all that spotlight, I would think he's not very talent-centric because it really takes a village to run a
Hmm.
company.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Everybody, people may have different titles, they may have different responsibilities. Some responsibilities may be may appear to be more important than others, but without everybody really doing their jobs, the whole, you know, the whole wheel cannot roll.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I
what's
think,
important.
like, and I think like now it's becoming like, we go to events, we want to see,
Mhm.
we as people want to see diversity, right? And
Yes.
I think sometimes that could hurt too, right? So
Mhm.
like, we should, this is my viewpoint, right? My viewpoint is that don't invite me on stage because I'm a female,
Oh, yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
Invite me on stage because I have something valuable to add to the conversation. And I think representation is so
Mhm.
important, Carol. And I think this is where, when I see sometimes like that token female, right? And they're not contributing to the conversation, it
Mhm.
makes our whole agenda void. You
I
have
agree.
plenty of women in AI, you have plenty of women in insurtech, you have plenty of women that want to do this. They just may be hidden. And I think
Mhm.
it's up to the industry and the leaders to bring those
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, I feel like, sometimes they would be like, okay, Bobbie, it's between you and Brent, and I want you. But we have to evaluate that that's not really good, right? Because Brent's perspective is totally different. He
That's right.
came at it from a different angle, and I come at it from a different angle.
Mhm.
And it's just having that balance, right? It's just we have a little bit more work to do in terms of that.
You're right, and, I think this is where, DEI is really important, um, but to do it to just check a box
Yeah.
really invalidates the entire thing.
Yes.
I had a young woman that I was working with, African American gal. She's now a second line manager. And when I did my discovery call with her, and I said, where, if you look toward the end of your career, what is it you want to do? And she said, I want to be a CEO of Fortune 500, and I don't want to be a diversity hire.
Yeah.
It's
We don't
exactly
want
what
that
she said to me, and
either.
I thought,
Yeah.
"Bravo." Because
Yeah.
the minute you are appointed because somebody's checking a box, it really minimizes your value.
Yeah.
How can you look at it
And
any other way?
yeah, and you're spot on, right? Spot
Mhm,
on. And I think that's where, if we're truly focused on so my philosophy is like,
mhm,
especially in these events, are a big
mhm,
portion of insurance tech, and
mhm,
how we meet customers, right? So it becomes this important, like, do we pay to play or do we do this? But then it's also like, I feel like a responsibility from an industry perspective is to represent your workforce. What is your workforce right now, right?
mhm,
Because we're selling technology to that workforce. We're not selling it to the CEO, right? The CEO doesn't truly benefit from, well, they do, but I'm just saying, like, who are we selling this to, right? Like, who is the people that are going to be consuming this? And if we're not talking to their voices and they're not being invited to hear these voices, that's where the equilibrium falls out. Because
mhm,
when you ask the question, like, how does it feel like to be a female founder, oftentimes it's just Brent and I as the only female founder. Even now it's getting a little bit better, but back in 2018, it was like two females pitching
right,
out of a group of 10 to 15 companies, right?
mhm.
The bathroom line is always smaller, which I love, but that's not, and when you look at ITC type of
Mm,
events,
mhm,
you will still see a very big percentage male and a
yes,
very small percentage female.
mhm,
And if you look at the insurance industry, 60% of your workforce is female. I
right.
should see, I should see, I should see those bathroom lines. Like, we need to have more
That's right,
bathrooms
you're
than
right. I
yeah.
mean, and it's a really interesting observation, and, I've always said that companies instead of thinking it as, diversity, think of that your company should look like our planet, right?
Yeah.
And if our planet is now over 50% women, And that's what your company should look like. And if our planet is, X amount, I don't know what the percentage is of, Black or Asian or whatever that is, your company should look like that. Now that's in a perfect world, right?
Yeah.
I'm consulting with an early stage founder right now, and he said, Carol, we've got to find women. And I said, well, you don't have to tell me that, okay? But the reality is, this is a renewables industry, and it's primarily men. And I am scrambling, looking for some women to be on an advisory board. We both are, and there is, sometimes you just have to say it is what it is. Or you have
Yeah.
to look and take somebody who maybe isn't quite ready for this role yet and say, what kind of training development can we give this individual to get them? And that's,
Yeah.
really a whole separate conversation, but to get them where they need to be, right? So that we do have women in these roles, who are expressing themselves and representing us as a gender. And
Yeah.
when you look at ITC, I don't want to get too far off track. I mean, it's a pay to play conference, right?
Yeah.
So, who's paying to be there? The big carriers, and who's running the big carriers,
Yeah.
right? This is why we're still seeing primarily men,
Yeah.
but you just have to, in my opinion, chip away at it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit at a time,
I think
you
it's
know.
going to take us a few success stories
Mhm.
of showcasing and actually arriving,
Right.
and then I think it'll be it's the same conversation in the investment side. Well, females
Mhm.
don't get funded. Well, let's get more exits, right? And
Yes.
we are in the position of funding, and that's going to change it's going to take time, right?
Yeah.
So it's the whole model that I go by is no excuses. I have no excuse. If I hustled my way through, I can solve any problem. I can
Mhm.
learn a new industry, and to me, it's like it's yeah, I see it as a big challenge, and the only thing I would tell the females that are listening here is don't give up, because there's plenty of
Yeah.
us out there that are motivating and inspiring and
Mhm.
want us to get there, and we just flock together, and we'll figure it out.
Carol Schultz here. Thanks for watching this excerpt from Authentically Successful. The conversation doesn't end there. So if you want to hear this episode in full and all my conversations with many other successful founders and CEOs, please visit verticalelevation.com/podcast.